All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So a new report has surfaced early this morning, I think around like 7 o'clock this morning, from Ian Rapoport in the NFL Network, suggesting that the New York Jets are Davante Adams' number one choice. Rapoport clearly states that Davante Adams wants to play for the Jets, right? It does not get any, you cannot say it any more simpler. He goes on to say if Davante Adams gets his wish, he'll eventually be a member of the New York Jets playing with his friend and four-time MVP, Aaron Rodgers. New York is where the Raiders star wants to play after informing the team on Monday he prefers to be traded, multiple sources say, but Adams has not demanded as much from Las Vegas, and this is not a scenario like Rodgers in 2023 when the quarterback informed the Packers he would only play for the Jets. In fact, according to sources informed of Adams' thinking, he's open to playing for several other teams, the Saints, Steelers, Ravens, Bills, and Cowboys, and perhaps the 49ers. Are among teams that either have inquired about the six-time Pro Bowler or are places that Adams would be happy landing. Now let's quickly go through that list of teams here and try to eliminate them one by one. Objectively speaking, of course, right? Now I think there's some teams on here that make a lot of sense, and then there's some that just frankly don't at all. So the Cowboys, to me, feel as though they would only push for a Davante Adams trade if something happens to CeeDee Lamb this week, right? To where they're down their star receiver, they're down their number one wide receiver. McCarthy has a lot of pressure on him to succeed. Jerry Jones, we all remember the all-in quote. But with that said, Davante's owed a lot of money. Dak is owed a lot of money. Trevon Diggs is owed a lot of money. CeeDee Lamb is owed a lot of money. There's a lot of money that's being, right, Micah Parsons has not signed his contract yet. There's a lot of money that Dallas, is either paying or has to pay. So at this point, I just feel like it's unlikely for Dallas to do this. Moving on to the San Francisco 49ers, I just don't see how it's possible, right? Unless the Raiders get Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel or one of these bigger contracts off the books. I mean, you're looking at it from the 49ers perspective. I guess you can maybe argue because they are so good, because they have Super Bowl aspirations, they're going to pick up the phone and just see what's out there. Anytime a big name player, a star player, potentially becomes available, it would be smart for a Super Bowl contender to just call, because you never know what that guy could potentially be going for, right? But with that understanding, San Francisco acquiring Davante Adams just to me seems like overkill. And I think the 49ers would rather, just hang on to the draft capital, save the extra bit of money. I mean, Brock Purdy's still on his... part of the reason why everybody's on these big contracts, McCaffrey, Kittle, Bosa, all these different players, it's because Brock Purdy is hardly getting paid anything, right, from an NFL standpoint, of course. But rookie deal, last pick in the draft, eventually he's going to have to get his contract. So San Francisco, just, I don't see it. Moving on, the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is another interesting team because, you kind of feel like they're defensive led. Justin Fields has been playing some good football, but it's not to say that they're like devoid of talent, right? I like Freiermuth. I like Najee Harris. I like George Pickens. They could use another wide receiver for sure, especially a guy like Davante Adams. They were in the Brandon Ayuk trade conversation and whatnot, but ultimately the price might just be too high for the Steelers to pay. Now, who knows? Maybe something gets done. Because the Steelers keep popping up. The Saints and the Jets and the Steelers are like the three teams that just keep popping up when it comes to Davante Adams. But I personally feel like the Jets and the Saints have more maybe pressure on them to strike a deal with Davante, considering the head coach hot seat, considering pressure on the quarterback to succeed again in both franchises, both situations. But Steelers, they could make it happen. They're a well-ran organization. Lots of players love Mike Tomlin, and they could use that extra wide receiver, especially considering that the division that they play in is very, very good and very, very talented. These teams that have gotten off to rocky starts, there's a really good chance that they could bounce back literally this week and then go on a roll, go on a winning streak. So Pittsburgh, I guess you can argue they do need all the firepower that they can get, but still maybe too big of a price to pay. Baltimore, interesting option for sure. I would go as far as to say if you add Davante Adams to the Ravens, you are literally giving Lamar the best receiver that he's ever played with in his entire career. Because that's the case, you have to pick up the phone and do your due diligence if you are the Ravens. But again, I don't feel as though there's a ton of pressure on Baltimore. They looked fast. They looked physical the other night against Buffalo. I think they're going to turn it around, right? Barely losing to the Chiefs in week one. I think this Ravens team is going to be okay with or without Davante. The Buffalo Bills, from a Madden perspective, from like a names on paper perspective, I understand it, right? Davante is, an upgrade over Keon Coleman. He's an upgrade over Matt Collins and these guys. But the whole identity of the Buffalo Bills offense is we can hurt you in a bunch of different ways. Kincaid, Knox, Shakir, again, Matt Collins, Keon Coleman, Josh Allen, James Cook, Josh Allen running the football. There's a lot of different ways that this Bills team can kind of come out of defense. And I really think that gives Joe Brady and Josh Allen an advantage, right? Who do you shut down? Because if you shut down one, we can just go to someone else. The whole point of why they traded Stephon Diggs, of course, right, save money. You're getting out of a pretty big contract, but it's to eliminate a headache, eliminate, somebody that's chirping on the sideline, somebody that demands the football every couple of plays. He needs to get his touches. Do the Buffalo Bills want to revert right back to that position with Davante Adams? I don't know. To me, it just kind of defeats the whole purpose of the entire offseason for the Bills. And that's not just me saying that as a Jets fan trying to like justify why the Bills won't do it. I just don't really feel like it makes a ton of sense. I'm not saying that Davante in Buffalo wouldn't work or he would be bad. Obviously not. But just trying to read the tea leaves here, being as one of the best general managers in football, I just don't necessarily know if he wants to go down that path again where the offense kind of becomes a little tunnel vision to where Davante is the number one option in virtually every passing situation. Now, it leaves us with these last two teams. And by the way, I'm surprised that the Arizona Cardinals and the Washington Commanders are not on this list. Supposedly, we have gotten... there's been some rumors that a mystery NFC team is willing to acquire Davante Adams, like they want him, but they're not willing to part with the second round pick. Who is that NFC team? I have no idea. Nobody really knows at this point. But it really feels as though it's the Jets and the Saints. Those two teams make the most sense, right? Those are two teams that have been talked about from the beginning. Those are the two teams that have a lot of pressure on them to succeed. Those are the two teams that could use another wide receiver to the room. Those are the two teams where Adam comes in and fits both systems perfectly. Those are the two teams where Adams knows the quarterbacks very, very well. Obviously, Rodgers with the Jets in Green Bay, Carr, Fresno State, and then his one season with the Raiders. And I don't think we should downplay that. Carr's relationship with Davante Adams. Those two guys are tight. Those two guys have had a lot of success. I understand it's not been NFL playoff success, but you look at Davante Adams' numbers in year one with the Raiders, working with Derek Carr, first team All-Pro. So Carr can get Adams the football. There's no doubt about it. I think it comes down to compensation, right? From the Raiders' perspective, I guess ideally you would like to deal Adams to the NFC. Maybe it makes more sense. You don't have to deal with him as much. But, to me, that's, if I'm Tom Telesco and the Jets are giving you the better offer, take the better offer. Like that, the whole AFC, NFC thing, to me, is irrelevant. Unless you're talking about the Chiefs, where it's, a direct division rival. You play them this season. You play them next year. It's 2 times a year. And you're going to see Adams, for the foreseeable future. You're going to be playing against a guy like that. So ultimately, I think who is going to fork over more compensation? Mickey Loomis and the Saints, Joe Douglas and the Jets. Both teams have pressure on them to succeed. The difference between these two spots, the Saints offense has been explosive as hell. They have scored a lot of points. They have gotten in the end zone a bunch. Derek Carr is rolling this season. They have 2 blowout wins and 2 very, very close losses to good teams, the Eagles and the Falcons. Whereas the Jets and their offense, at times this season has looked like just an abomination, right? The 49ers game last week against the Denver Broncos. You could also argue that, in that week 2 game, if Will Levis didn't have the multiple turnovers and there wasn't like this blocked punt, the Jets very well could have lost that game, right? Again, if Levis didn't just blow the game, didn't give it away. He's blown multiple games this season for Tennessee. So you kind of feel from that aspect like the Jets need Adams more. Like if the Saints don't acquire Adams, they'll be totally fine. They can go out. If they really want a wide receiver, they can trade for Amari Cooper. They can trade for DeAndre Hopkins. They can trade for a Christian Kirk or somebody like that. Whereas the Jets, it's like a little bit more pressure on the organization for sure. The window's a lot smaller. There's pressure on GM Joe Douglas to make something happen here. There's really no pressure on Mickey Loomis. I guess there's always pressure as a general manager, but I personally don't think Loomis is in danger of losing his job. With Douglas, there is. So I think it gets done. I truly think it gets done. I don't want to sit here and jinx it. Let me, knock on wood here, but I just feel as though the Jets make the most sense. And if it's not the Jets, I would say it's the Saints. So that's kind of my take on it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Where will Adams wind up? I would have to guess we're probably going to get word early next week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Somewhere in that ballpark. To me, and we talked about this last night, it doesn't make much sense, in my opinion, for the Raiders to let Adams go today, tomorrow. There's something to be said about teams playing another game. And also, too, another thing that makes sense. With another game that passes, that's roughly just under $1 million less that the acquiring team is going to have to pay Davante Adams. It's not like the Saints and the Jets are sitting here with $80-90 million in cap space. Every dollar counts. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, go Jets.